crafty friends, this is Chelsea. Welcome to today's video. I am super excited to share my next scrapbooking workshop with you. So I do have a guide available for this. There are 6 pages altogether, so 3 double page spreads. And as you can tell, they are fall themed or autumn themed, depending on where you are and what you call it. And I am using some new Stampin' Up products from the mini catalog, the September to December 2024 mini catalog, and the paper I used is called Regal Winter. So yes, it is not designed to be fall paper, but when I saw some of these patterns, I thought they would work perfectly for fall pages. I love the rich jewel tone colors, and I thought they would lend themselves really nice to be mixed with some metallics, and I added in some yellows and oranges just to help bring out that fall feeling. I'm also using the Regal Distressed patterns. These ones all have a gold foiling on them, so they add even more bling to my pages. Now I'm going to bring this a little bit closer for you so that you can see all this shimmer and shine. There are some fun techniques on here, and I'm going to demonstrate them for you in this video. So whether you have the guide or not, you can get an idea of how to create these beautiful leaves. If you would like the guide, there's a couple different ways you can get it. I will have everything linked down in the description box below for you. If you're within Canada, you can actually get this guide for free by making an order on my Stampin' Up website for $80 or more before tax and shipping, or you can get it for free by joining my team, and then you'll get all of my guides and my friend Julie Carrier, all of her guides for free. And for my international friends, there is a link down below. If you're outside of Canada, then you can purchase the guide directly. I love all the bling going on here. You can see I have shimmer, shine, foil, glitter, all the things. And I'm going to show you how I achieve this look. So I'll show you the products that I'm using for these leaves because they are definitely one of the heroes of this set of pages. I'm using the Changing Leaves set, and I did use the bundle. So I have the stamp, the die, and the hybrid embossing folder. Now the hybrid folder is pretty cool because you can see there is a die in there. That is not like locked in there. It's just kind of nested in there. So it just kind of nests in there so that you can emboss and cut them out at the same time. Now there are some leaf designs that don't cut out, and several of these, like these full leaf ones, I did hand cut them. They're super easy to hand cut because I didn't want to waste them, and I thought they would add some good dimension to my clusters and kind of fill it out a little bit more. And then within this set, I put my stamp and die sets together. So this is the spot where the big die goes. I don't leave it in the embossing folder. I do store it back on here. But we also have some standalone dies that have these beautiful detailed like outline leaves, a little sprig here, and some other shapes that you can use for sentiments or words, and you'll see I've incorporated a couple of these into my pages. Now I didn't end up using the stamps a lot. I did use this one here and this little saying here on my layouts, but if you didn't want to do the embossing, you could definitely just get the dies and the stamps and come up with a similar look. But there is something really cool that you can do with the embossed shapes, and I'm going to show you that. Now for titles, if you don't like the titles that I have on my pages, you can definitely come up with your own because I just used some dies. I've been using these ones a ton. This is the mini alphabet dies from Stampin' Up, and you can see they are pretty little, but there's lots of like different characters and everything there as well. And I just find they're the perfect size for making some longer titles. This one is cut out of the metallic paper that I used. And this is textured metallics. It comes in a 3-pack. So there is the gold, like bright gold. I used that on one of the layouts. And then the other 2, I used the copper paper that comes in here. And hopefully you can see it has a slight texture to it. I've been really loving copper lately, and I think it goes beautifully with like the reds and pinks and purples. I don't think the camera really does it justice, and it's hard sometimes to like photograph because unless you get the light at the right angle, you just don't see that beautiful shine. Now, the papers do not come in these sleeves. This is what I store all of my papers in. My pattern paper, my cardstock. I got these off of Amazon, and I always have them linked down in my description under my favorite products because I use them to store all my paper, and I really like them. It makes keeping everything tucked away super easy. All right, I'm gonna clear away these pages for now, and I'm going to show you how I did the leaves and some of the different colors that I blended together to get the different effects. And then I'll come back and show you the other pages in this workshop. So to emboss and die cut my white cardstock, I have cut it down into 6x6 squares. I think that's a lot easier than trying to perfectly fit it just around where the dies are. And like I said, there are a couple extra ones on the sides that we can hand cut. So this way we get to maximize the full space and it makes it quick and easy. Now, could you color your paper first and then die cut it? Yes, you could. But I think then you're just wasting a lot of color and you can't place your color precisely where you want it, which is what I did in this case. So I want to die cut first. I have this upside down, so I have my die nestled into the grooves where it goes, and then I'll just add my white cardstock in here. Now I'm using a Big Shot. Some of these 3D embossing folders can be a little bit tight in here, but I do have the regular platform that it comes with tab number 2, and then just a cutting plate. And I found if I put this in with the kind of like spine end, the closed end of the embossing folder going through first, and then I put my top plate in so that I have lots of plate kind of going in before. It helps to feed it in, but whenever you're doing something and it starts to feel really tight, make sure that you back it out and don't try and force it. Every machine seems to be a little bit different, and check the manufacturer's directions on your machine so that if your sandwich needs to be a little bit different, you can do that. You definitely don't want to break your machine, and if you try to force it too hard, you can break it. All right, so this is what it looks like afterwards. Just gonna pull those out. So this is the extra little piece that you get. These ones here are the extra leaves that I use, this group of 2 and this single one here. The rest, there's a couple of skinny ones that you could cut out. There's a lot of little partial ones, and if you wanted to find something to do with them, you definitely could. But these are the main ones I'm going to be using. You can see they give a really beautiful texture. I love these leaves. They're so pretty. I've done another layout on my channel where I actually did these in vellum, and I embossed them and die cut them just like this, but with vellum, and they looked gorgeous because everywhere where that imprint is, it makes it kind of like a white color on the frosted vellum. Now, I will say it's easier to crank this through when you have vellum inside. With the White Daisy cardstock from Close to My Heart, I would only ever put 1 sheet in. I wouldn't want to try and fit more than that unless you're using a different sandwich than what I'm using. Now you should have a big stack of white leaves if you are following along with my guide and doing the layouts. I'm just going to do a few to show you some of the color combinations that I used on these pages. You can definitely play around with what you have. I'm using a combination of Close to My Heart and Stampin' Up colors, and I do give you the opposite selection. So if I'm using a Close to My Heart color, I give you what's closest to it in the Stampin' Up ink. If I'm using the Stampin' Up colors, I'll give you the closest that there is in the Close to My Heart colors, since I'm still working with like a bit of each. I don't have the full collection of the Stampin' Up inks right now. You can see I'm even using Blackberry Bliss in the little Stampin' spot from one of the kits. When you don't have all the colors, it's really nice getting these little Stampin' spots just to give me a little taste of the colors I don't have yet. And then I'm using the Metallic Enamel Effects, the basic set. I didn't use the silver, so the silver is in there, but the copper and the gold I used. So the 2 layouts where I used the copper foiled paper, I used this, the copper enamel effects, and then the one where I used the gold metallic paper, I used the gold effects, just because I thought it suited the colors a little bit better. And then I have saffron, pumpkin, Eggplant and Peacock. Now, instead of Eggplant, I'm using Blackberry Bliss. They are comparable. This one is quite a bit darker, but they're the same tone. And then from Stampin' Up, I'm using Crumb Cake, Early Espresso, and Cherry Cobbler. Then you're going to want a little blending brush for all of those colors so that you can have one brush per color. Remember, you can always rinse out your blending brushes if you don't have enough where you can dedicate one to a color family or one to a specific color. You can always rinse them out and let them dry after you've used them. I'm also bringing in some platinum stickles. You may have seen that I used this in one of my last videos for the sand dollars, and I tend to go like this. I'll use something I haven't used in a while and then I'll kind of get stuck on it. So this is making an appearance on these pages as well. And then I have some paintbrushes. I have just like a flat paintbrush and a smaller paintbrush. It's up to you. Whatever you have will work. You can even just use your fingers. I'm also using a mini ink blending tool. You could use a dauber. And I'm using this just for my edges. So you may have noticed my edges have like a dark brown around all of them on my base pages, my photo mats, my layers. I have ripped some of my layers and then inked them just to help them stand out a little bit, really show that texture. I've been getting back into inking a little bit more recently, and you can see how I've done this little kind of vignette edge. It's pretty small. I didn't go big on it, but you can see on my base pages as well, I have that little vignette edge. And so when I'm inking my edge, I just kind of go around like this because I don't want to bring the ink in too far. I find if I use a blending brush, I end up bringing in way too much ink. So I'll use that if I want a very like soft, diffused edge that really blends into my page. But when I want to keep it right on the edge, I use one of these, or you could use a foam dauber. And then when you get to the corner, if you kind of just go right across the corner like that, you'll get that nice kind of circular corner like that gives you that little vignette. Now you could use probably any dark brown. I did use the Early Espresso for this one. Now it can be kind of tricky to hold your pieces still while you're trying to ink blend, especially if you're using several colors like I did. So you can do a couple things. You can go ahead and put some of your tape runner right down on your mat and just push your die cut onto that to help hold it. I'd probably put a little bit more down here so that the bottom half doesn't get all wiggly. And I have done that quite a bit in the past. If you're working on an all-purpose mat like this, the adhesive just kind of like balls right up and comes off. So you don't have to worry about it making a big mess on your mat. Another option is using some form of sticky mat. I have this. This is actually supposed to be like a printing plate, like a gel plate, but it is... I've had this for a very long time and I've actually never used it for gel printing, mostly for the reason that it's really skinny. And it was kind of on the cheaper side. I believe I got it from Michael's quite a few years ago. And it's not great for gel printing because you want something fairly thick and squishy. But it's the same kind of idea where it's like just kind of a jelly surface. And then this one is actually really sticky. So it's kind of a sticky mat. And this is what I use to hold my pieces still. Now you can see it is stained. Some of the colors, the red, the Cherry Cobbler, and the Blackberry Bliss, really stained on this, which I don't care because this is what I'll probably just keep using it for. But if you take that and just press it on, it holds it while you ink, and then it's easy to peel off. It doesn't get stuck there, but it's sticky enough to hold it. If you have like a stamp wheel, I believe they come with a sticky mat inside them, and there's also other companies that make a sticky mat. If you have this little Stampin' Up mat, you can see it says Stampin' Up down there. This comes with the glass mat. It doesn't really have a great surface for inking over here because of this texture. I don't really want to have to try and get the ink out of this texture. But if you flip it over to the back, it works the same sort of way. It's not as sticky as this, but because it's that kind of silicone texture, it holds onto it, but it will stain. So if that bothers you, I wanted to test it out and see if it would stain so that in case that bothered anyone, I wasn't telling you to do it and it wouldn't stain. It will stain with the same dark colors, the Blackberry Bliss, the Cherry Cobbler. And I would imagine most reds and purples and maybe even like darker blues and things would stain as well. If you have a gel plate like this is my gel press that I actually use for gel printing, and it does not work because it is not sticky enough to hold the pieces down. I just wanted to mention that to you. Okay, let's dive in and get to doing some inking. So I'm going to start with my yellow. If you want very light yellow on your ends, then start your yellow in here so that by the time you get to the ends, you don't have a lot left on your brush. If you want more intense yellow, then start out here and work your way inwards. I'm going to start with a light application for this one, and I'm just going in circular motions. It does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be even. And once you kind of get in the rhythm of doing it, you can be fairly quick with it. Now I'm going to grab Pumpkin, my orange color, and I'm going to come in right here. Most of the time, like the ends of these are not showing, so you don't even have to ink them up if you don't want to. You don't really have to worry about what they look like. And how much ink you add is totally up to you. If you want to make sure that your ink is very even, you can tap off on a scrap piece. I don't really care because I found once I got everything layered up, we're going to add a couple more like treatments to these leaves. So it really didn't matter if it was uneven or there was like dark spots, light spots. It didn't really matter. I'm trying to go about half the length of the leaves with this orange color. I want to go close enough to the end so it actually shows, because I don't have orange in any of my papers, and so this is where I wanted to bring in the orange. Now we have a couple of options from here. We could go into the cherry cobbler color. This is a very pinky red. Close to My Heart does not have a red that is this color, but you could bring in something like pomegranate. It's a little bit lighter, but it has that same pinky red tone to it. So we could go that way, and that would give us this sort of color. So you can see we have the yellow up here, we have some orange, and then you can see the red and what that looks like. Or we can go and make it a little bit more like rusty looking, and the way I got to there was using Blackberry Bliss. I think that one is my favorite color combo, but it's good to switch it up and have some variations. So I'm just going to go in with this. Now, typically you would not layer purples over oranges because you are going to get like some sort of rusty brownish color. But in the case of leaves, that's kind of what we're going for. So this is going to give us some depth, create some dimension on our leaves. I like blending with the 3 colors. You could definitely stop at 2. You could just do 1 color if you wanted to. But I love the variation and I love the depth. So here is how that leaf is looking. Now keep in mind it will look different because the inks are still wet. Inks tend to look darker when they're wet and then they lighten back a little bit as they dry. Also, we are going to add some things on top of them which will change the look of them slightly as well. So if you love the color combination that you have at this stage, you might want to skip adding anything over top. That's just something to keep in mind. Now, while I have my inks out, let's go ahead and do some other color combos. Here for this leaf, this is the same color combo that I just showed you with the yellow, orange, and then the purple. These ones here, I used the cherry cobbler and the Blackberry Bliss. So I'll show you what that looks like. Typically on all my leaves, I went for lighter on the ends, darker at the base. That's just what makes sense to me. Another note on this little like sticky mat, if you're using a sticky mat, it works as a great place for your little ink cubes. It really holds them in place. They are not going anywhere. I really am enjoying using this one. It's working really well to hold everything in place. And now that I've already jacked it up and stained it, I can feel free to keep using it and I won't feel bad about it. So this is cherry cobbler. You can see it is quite a pinky red. It kind of fools you with the label. You're thinking like, oh, that's kind of like a deep burgundy, but it has a very strong pink base to it. And you can see as we blend it out, you really see that pink come out. Now it's up to you. You can leave white tips all the way around and only bring your color part of the way. You can go all the way up, but you always want to start kind of here at the base, put the most color here and then get lighter as you go up if you want to have the same effect that I have on mine. And then I'm going in with a Blackberry Bliss, and I'm just going to add a little bit of depth here. You could stick with that one color. There would be nothing wrong with that. I also could have added like some yellow or some orange down first. As long as you stay within the color palette that matches your paper, I think you can really come up with all kinds of fun combinations. I encourage you to play with that and see what colors you like. If you don't want to waste your die cut leaves, you can always practice on some just like scrap pieces of paper with different ink blending combos and see what your favorites are without using all your die cuts. Now you can see I have a more purpley leaf here. That one is just with Blackberry Bliss. Same thing, start at the base, work your way up so it gets very light at the end. And the other color you're seeing on there is actually from the copper we're going to add afterwards. Now I did find it easier and faster if you kind of pick one color combo per type of leaf. That way when you're building your clusters, you know you have a good sampling of the colors. So my big ones I always did with like the yellow, orange, and blackberry, or yellow, orange, and cherry cobbler, just to keep it simple. Then I knew what was going on. These little like spiky looking ones I did in browns. And then in these ones I did a combination of either the pinks, the like pink red look, or some orange, just depending on what I felt like each cluster needed. So I'm going to show you that brown combination real quick. I'm using Crumb Cake. There is not an exact match for Crumb Cake in the Close to My Heart line, but I think if you use toffee, you could get a similar look. So it's up to you if you want to go right up to the top. Some of mine I did, some of them I left some white on the end, which just gives a really nice pop that helps it stand out against the background, especially if it's on top of a darker paper. And then I'm going to go with the early espresso. And it's kind of nice if you can do all your ink blending at once. You kind of get a little bit faster at it. And since you're not trying to figure out the layouts, I did that job for you. You can go ahead and figure out how you want to ink everything and then just go to town. Put on a show, listen to some music, and just blend away. And just keep adding until you're happy with what you've got. So there's that one. I am wiping my plate in between just because I don't want to transfer a different color ink onto a brush and then put it into the wrong color ink pad, especially if I'm going from darker colors into yellow or something like that. Here is a little sneak at the next layout. You can see I brought in purples and greens, and so I wanted to reflect some of the green in the leaves. So I'm going to show you that one. I actually used those little set of 2 leaves that I hand cut out. So this little pair of leaves right there, those are the ones that I did with that yellow and green. And I'll show you that right now. So I just left them on there. I did not cut it out. I'm going to use the saffron ink again. And this time I'm going to go in from the ends, because I don't want this to mix with the peacock color I'm going to add next. So they're going to mix in the middle and create a green, but I don't want the whole thing to be that color. I want to see some of the teal, so I need to leave some white so that I can see that teal color. So Close to My Heart Peacock or the Stampin' Up Pretty Peacock is the same. They're pretty, not exactly the same, but they are really similar. I'm just rotating my piece so it's a little bit more comfortable for me to blend. And then you just keep adding until you are happy with the depth, keeping in mind that it will change a little bit as it dries and also depending on what you put on top of it. Before I do the next step, I am going to come in and just quickly cut this out. It's super fast and easy to cut this one out. Both of the leaves that are left, you really don't need a die to do that. And I just cut up to that embossed line. I didn't think there was any point in really leaving like an outline around it because it's not really going to make too much of a difference. So there is what they look like when they are all cut out. And now I want to show you how we kind of put a little treatment on these to make them shimmery. So for these We'll pretend that these ones are for layouts number 1 and number 3. We are going to use the copper enamel effects. And I'm just going to put some of that right out on my mat. You could use a palette. Now, keeping in mind, these are kind of like a paint. So you're going to want to make sure that you rinse your brush. Don't be like me. I forgot to rinse out this brush, so it's feeling a little stiff in there. But you do want to rinse out your brushes afterwards. This mat, if it dries on here, it's fine. You can scrape it off. I'm just going to take this very lightly. I'm not using any pressure. And I'm just pulling this across all that texture. So this is where the embossing really comes in. And it pays off to have used that embossing folder because you get that beautiful texture. So there you can kind of see that really pretty shimmer kind of metallic finish that has added. It does change the colors just a little bit. Really pretty. And then for all of the leaves that I did for layout number 2, so even when they're in these colors, I used the gold. So I'm just gonna squeeze some of that out. I should actually go and rinse out my brush in the sink, but I'm gonna try and just rub it off with a baby wipe so I don't have to run to the sink. I'm just gonna drag that across. And it's quite transparent, so you're still gonna see all the beautiful colors underneath. But you're gonna have that really pretty metallic shine to it. Now, last step on here, I am taking the Platinum Stickles, and it's up to you if you want to let these dry. If you're doing a whole bunch, by the time you get around to the one you did first, this will be dry. It dries really fast, especially when you're spreading it on super thin. Now, you could either use a small paintbrush, or you can do like me and use your finger. And I am not trying to cover this completely. I am just trying to get a little bit on here, kind of thicker down here at the base, and then spread it out so there's just like a few sparkles on the ends. And I just love the look of that. It just adds that little bit of extra twinkle. You can see I'm not getting like super heavy coverage. When we get towards the end, there's only like a few sparkles, and the majority of them are in that center part. Now, do you need to do all those layers? No, you don't. But if you want these really amazing leaves, that is how I achieved them. I'm gonna clean up this mess, go rinse out my brushes before I forget, and then I will show you the rest of the layouts. And here is that second layout. Now you can see the whole thing in its entirety. A little bit different of a color palette with purple and teal color, that peacock color. And this is the one where I used the gold foil. So you can see, I thought the yellow would look really nice against the purple. And I thought the copper went a little bit better with the red and pink and purple in the other paper. But I did the in the leaves, and remember, you can customize your title however you want. There is some stamping on the paper back here and on the coordinating one over here. This is the Crumb Cake cardstock. And I kept fairly similar colors on the leaves. This one here has like orange and brown on it. The others are pretty similar to what I showed you. You can really have fun with that. And of course you can see all that sparkle on there from the Stickles. I did some banner ends on here, and I did edge my papers with the same early espresso, just like I did on the other layout. This one I did 3 clusters. Lots of room for photos. This is a sentiment from that stamp set, from the Changing Leaves stamp set. And the kind of bling on here that you're seeing is the gold textured adhesive-backed dots. These are from the mini catalog as well, and they're really interesting. They have this like glowy yellow color. They kind of reflect light, but they also have a little bit of kind of metallic shimmer on them. I don't think the camera will pick it up. Maybe a little bit. You can kind of see it there on that one. Really pretty. And I thought rather than going with more of a like a metallic gem, I thought these were a really nice additional sort of texture or finish to add to the pages. See, I have some more banner ends here to coordinate with the ones over here. And now let's look at that final set of pages. This last one is a grid design. I love doing grid designs. I think they're really fun. I put Hello Fall, but of course you could do Hello Autumn. There is enough room for that to fit along here. And I'll bring this up close. I have a ripped edge here with ink along the edge. I have added an additional layer on here, and I did gut my paper, so I saved the middle part to cut out my additional pieces from, because I don't want to waste any of that beautiful paper. You can see those nice clusters. Now here I brought in one of those additional shapes. This die is from the Changing Leaves set. And all die additional words on this page are from the Love This Moment set. Now you could use any set you want that has small words that will fit on these little die cut shapes. I have I love this over here. I stuck with some pretty like generic ones that would go with any sort of fall photos. This is actually a pretty good set for scrapbooking. You have some lines for journaling. You have some options that you could use for a title. And if you didn't want to say hello fall, you could always do the happy. You could do happy fall or just happy. If you wanted to keep it a little bit more generic, you could do it that way. And I did add all of these up on foam dots. All of my leaves and everything, they are just flat. I just used liquid glue to attach them. You can see I used those journaling lines on this card here. If you didn't want to leave room for journaling, you could always add another photo on here as well. Now I just have to show you one more thing. I added photos on this first layout. Now look at that. That is where the magic happens. And I really encourage you guys, if you're going to make this guide, go ahead and print some photos, whether you go ahead and make all the pages and then add your photos, or print your photos and do it at the same time. But the pages really come alive once you add your photos and your stories. Now you probably notice I didn't leave specific spot for journaling, but there's a few different places I could put it. I could do some down here, either just drawing lines and just writing directly on my page, or doing strip journaling. I could add a couple strips of journaling up here, either like hand done or printed off my computer. And then I could continue that over here. Depends on how much story I have to tell. I actually have a lot to tell. This is from my birthday party last year, and hanging out with two of my really good friends, and they're just hilarious. They planned this beautiful birthday party for me. We even did some painting. We altered these photos. They were actually like printed off on watercolor paper, and then we added acrylic paint to them to turn them into Halloween paintings. That was kind of a trend going around, and it was so much fun. And I'm so glad that I got these documented. Now I wanted to show you one more thing. That is what an impact it makes when you add photos. So here is layout number 2, and I want to show you in a real quick change so you can see the difference right before your eyes when you don't have photos, and then we have our beautiful memories on our pages. Look what a difference that makes. I think with a quick change you can see it a little bit easier. I do need to add a little bit of a story on here, and then these pages are done and ready to go in my album. If you guys are interested in this guide, it's linked down in the description box. I hope if you're making pages, you're also putting your photos and your stories on your pages. I loved making these, and I hope you will too. I will see you very soon with another video. Thanks for watching. Bye.